Listen, something massive just happened in our economy. Something we literally haven't seen in 50 years. Just to give you a quick summary right off the bat, so you know exactly why you need to stick around to the end of this explainer, we are currently staring down a rare 50-year economic setup. And look, historically, this specific setup destroyed wealth for the vast majority of people. But, and this is a big but, at the exact same time, it made a very quiet, very prepared minority generationally rich. So the real question is, are you ready? Because right now, in 2026, every single piece of that historical wealth-destroying puzzle, it just snapped right back into place, almost to the letter. The only question left is which side of this massive wealth transfer you're going to be on.
To make sure you're on the winning side of history, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button to Economy Everybody right now. We really want to keep growing this channel and bringing you these crucial explainer insights way before the rest of the market catches on. So please subscribe. And without further ado, let's get straight to the point.
Section 1. The Threat Defined. Stagflation Explained.
Okay, so let's dive right into the actual macroeconomic threat we're facing here. It's notoriously tricky to navigate, and the word for it is stagflation. Basically, this is the absolute worst possible economic environment you can find yourself in. Why? Because three catastrophic things are happening simultaneously. Prices are shooting up, the overall economy is slowing down, and the job market is tanking. The reason this is just so dangerous is that the tools the Federal Reserve normally uses to fix one of these problems, well, they inevitably make the other two worse. If they cut rates to help the economy, bam, inflation skyrockets. But if they raise rates to fight inflation, they tank the economy and destroy jobs. You're just completely stuck.
Section 2. The 1970s Blueprint. A historical look back.
To really grasp the magnitude of what's happening today, we have to look back exactly 50 years, because the last time the U.S. was truly stuck in this mess was the 1970s. It all kicked off in 1971, when President Nixon took the U.S. dollar off the gold standard. This triggered a massive domino effect. Without the gold standard, the Fed could just print money with basically no hard limit, so we had unchecked money printing. Then, fast forward to 1973, the Yom Kippur War breaks out. Arab members of OPEC launched an oil embargo, and guys, that quadrupled gas prices almost overnight. Since oil is in literally everything, this massive shock sent inflation right through the roof, hitting over 13% in some years. And that led directly into massive stagflation.
Now, to fight that kind of runaway inflation, the Fed had to do something pretty drastic. By 1981, they aggressively hiked their main interest rate to a staggering 20%. I mean, just imagine that today. That pushed mortgage rates to 18% and drove unemployment all the way up to 11%, which forced the economy into multiple devastating recessions.
Section 3, 2026. History repeats. The current setup.
So why are we looking at all this today? Because this exact same environment is unfolding right now in 2026. The timeline is honestly shockingly similar. Think about it. Step 1. Back in 2020, to prevent a COVID collapse, we printed trillions of dollars, just like in 71. By mid-2022, that created 9.1% inflation. Step 2. Early 2026, military actions between the US, Israel, and Iran led to the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. Now that strait handled a fifth of global daily oil, so crude oil spiked to $141 a barrel. In Step 3, by February 2026, the U.S. economy shed 92,000 jobs in a single month, while core inflation was still stubbornly sitting at 3%.
The really crucial takeaway here is that the catalysts mirror each other almost perfectly. The 1971 gold standard removal matches our 2020 COVID stimulus printing. The 1973 Yom Kippur War oil shock perfectly mirrors the 2026 Strait of Hormuz conflict. So the Fed is once again in an impossible position. Everyone expected them to cut rates in June 2026, but with oil-driven inflation rising again, cutting rates would just make inflation explode. But if they raise them, we're looking at a full-blown recession.
Hey, this isn't just theory. Market veteran Ed Yardeni of Yardeni Research recently bumped his prediction of a 1970s-style stagflation scenario up to 35%. That's literally a 1 in 3 chance of facing the absolute worst economic environment in half a century, especially after those massive job losses we saw in February 2026.
Section 4. The investor misconception. How did they fare? To figure out how we actually survive this, let's look at a quick story of 3 different investors: Alex, Veronica, and Lucy. They each had exactly $100 a month to invest, starting way back in 1971. Let's look at their first 10 years, from 71 to 81. Alex put his money into the S&P 500. Veronica kept hers in a savings account, earning historically high interest. But Lucy was the opportunist. She bought gold. Over that decade, inflation ran at a wild 124%. So while Alex and Veronica technically saw their account balances go up, they actually went backwards in real purchasing power. But Lucy? Her gold investments absolutely crushed it with a massive 245% return, simply because people were fleeing the physical assets to escape inflation.
But wait, there's a huge plot twist here. Let's extend this timeline out to 20 years, right up to 1991. Once Fed Chair Paul Volcker hiked rates to 20% and finally crushed inflation, the dollar recovered and gold completely crashed. Lucy's gold strategy actually felt the dead last over those 2 decades. Meanwhile, Alex, the patient S&P 500 investor who just kept buying through all the crashes, he ultimately grew his money by over 430%, officially beating that cumulative 236% inflation.
And that brings us to an incredibly powerful quote. The single most important thing in investing is not picking the right asset in the right year, it's understanding why an asset is moving and knowing when that reason no longer applies. The folks who bought gold in 71 and sold in 80, they made an absolute fortune. But those who just blindly held onto it, they lost it. You cannot just blindly use the 1973 playbook for 2026. Why? Well, because the 1970s didn't have artificial intelligence. They didn't have a massive geopolitical reshuffling of supply chains or crazy semiconductor shortages. The macro threats might be similar, but the exact opportunities today are very, very different.
Section 5. The 2026 Wealth Shift. Where money is going.
So if the 1970s playbook doesn't perfectly apply, where exactly is the smart institutional money moving right now in 2026 to prepare? Well, according to the Citi Wealth Q2 2026 market commentary, institutional attention has aggressively shifted toward a highly structured framework we can call the 4 pillars of the 2026 wealth shift. Those are energy, defense, the physical AI backbone, and real assets. Let's break these down super quick.
All right, pillar 1 is energy. When oil hits $100 to $140 a barrel, integrated energy companies obviously benefit enormously. But here's the really massive difference from the 1970s. Back then, the U.S. relied heavily on importing oil. Today, the United States is the world's largest oil producer and a top exporter. That means U.S. energy companies uniquely benefit from these high global prices in a way they simply couldn't 50 years ago.
Moving on, Pillar 2 is defense and aerospace. With active military conflicts in the Middle East and NATO fundamentally reshaping its security assumptions across Europe, global defense budgets are expanding incredibly fast. And look, this isn't about taking any political sides here, we're just neutrally looking at where the capital is flowing. Government money is heavily pouring into the companies that manufacture missiles, aircraft, and advanced defense tech.
Pillar 3 is super fascinating. The physical backbone of AI. Reports from heavy hitters like Goldman Sachs and Van Eck are highlighting that major capital spending is shifting away from just digital software and moving into hard, physical infrastructure. Think about it. AI needs massive data centers, complex cooling systems, upgraded power grids, and tons of raw materials like copper. It honestly doesn't even matter which tech giant wins the AI software race because they all have to buy these physical picks and shovels to play the game.
And finally, Pillar 4, real assets. Charles Henry Mono, a chief investment officer, noted in March 2026 that we're seeing a sustained shift away from paper stocks, software companies with zero physical footprint, and moving aggressively toward hard assets. We're talking about physical commodities like steel, critical minerals, and energy. The physical economy is absolutely taking center stage again.
I want you to really burn this next quote into your mind. Safety that doesn't beat inflation is not safety. It's just slow wealth destruction. That is so key. The absolute biggest mistake average investors made in the 1970s was just doing nothing. They sat in cash, watched inflation slowly eat their purchasing power, and tricked themselves into thinking they were quote-unquote playing it safe. Let me tell you, doing nothing right now is not safe.
So I'll leave you with this somewhat provocative final question to chew on. Does your portfolio actually have exposure to the physical economy of 2026? Remember, preparation isn't panic. It's simply paying attention early enough to actually do something about it. If your answer to that question is no, it might be time to start asking yourself why. And hey, to help you navigate this massive shift, make sure you hit that subscribe button to Economy Everybody right now so we can keep guiding you through this 50-year economic reset. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.